It's been a busy week in politics, and we begin today with a lens on the state capitol as budget negotiations continue. This week has shown it's not been that easy. Talks between Republican lawmakers and Governor Tony Evers break down a couple of times already. Plus, there is renewed interest in state capitol security, and Supreme Court Chief Justice Ann Walsh Bradley is about to call it a career. Jaron Jordan, co-host of UpFront, joining us today to talk a little bit more about this week's show. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for being here. Okay, let's talk. Let's talk about the state budget. That has been obviously a big topic this week. We saw the Assembly and the governor's office both this week kind of pinning the blame on the Senate for some of these breakdowns in budget talks. Tell us about that. What's happening with that?
Yeah, so basically we've kind of hit this impasse on the budget, on budget talks. And right now, as you mentioned, this past week, you got the finger pointing on both sides, the governor's office and the Assembly, now looking at the Senate and saying, ultimately, it's their fault that these negotiations have kind of fallen apart. So what this means and how significant this is, it really could fast track the end of these negotiations. The Senate can really only lose one Republican if they want to pass the budget without any Democratic votes. So it will really depend on how this all moves forward and if they can pass the budget without Democratic votes or if they're going to have to kind of work with Democrats in the Senate to try to pass this budget. So very significant in the fact that now the finger pointing is really at the Senate, but it is also significant that the talks seemingly have resumed, at least partially, that is between the Assembly and the governor's office. So a lot to watch for really as we come to the end of the month and really just about a week left to get these negotiations hammered out.
And one of your guests this week is Senator Chris Kapenga. He came out opposing the budget. So you spoke with him. What is his take on all of this?
Yeah, so he did not say that he's a total no vote just yet, and he's not really sure what it's going to take him to get to a yes vote, but he definitely has some concerns in the budget that obviously the governor has proposed, and again, there's just this impasse with any other plan, and so he is really working with these negotiations and hoping to find some type of middle ground. It was interesting, he has a list of 3 options. You can either vote yes, vote no, or there's this third option where everything would kind of just carry over with no decision. And he said that he's kind of leaning toward that, but also just really letting his constituents know that there's a lot of uncertainty here with these negotiations really coming down to this 11th hour. So it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next, the course of the week or so and see where he actually lands.
As you mentioned, it is not this hard out at the end of the month. If they make no decision, it just kind of carries over. Last budget carries over to this upcoming year, correct?
Correct. So if there's no action, and then the current budget just carries over, and we heard from Senator Kapenga say that there are some concerns that he has with that related to the governor's veto powers. So there are just a lot of different options, a lot of different legs and tentacles to what could happen. A lot of eyes going to be on the Capitol over the next week.
Okay, you also, well, this week started out with that news out of Minnesota where 2 state lawmakers there were targeted. Security, obviously, a big issue for politicians both at home and at the Capitol. You spoke with a senator about wanting more Capitol security. Is he proposing something to this end?
Yeah, well, he wants metal detectors at the Capitol. He also wants he wants to ban weapons for anybody, for the public coming into the Capitol building. He just wants lawmakers to be allowed to carry, because currently anyone with a concealed carry permit can enter the Capitol grounds, can enter the Capitol building with a weapon. There are some exceptions to that. You're talking about the Supreme Court, for instance, going into the Supreme Court building, you cannot do that. But right now, he wants metal detectors at the Capitol building. Again, he also wants to ban the use of or being allowed for the public to carry weapons into the Capitol. The reaction, though, is pretty mixed there. There's a strong group of lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, who don't want to restrict access to the building. So there's no proposal in place just yet. Back in 2023, when Senator Kapenga was the Senate president, he proposed looking at different ways to strengthen security there at the Capitol. There was really not a lot of support to get anything passed at at that time. I asked him just this past week what changes now, and the hopes of and his hopes of strengthening security there at the Capitol. And these shootings, he says in Minnesota, could be the tipping point.
And also your colleague Matt Smith spoke with outgoing Supreme Court Chief Justice Ann Walsh Bradley. What was that interview about? She has 30 years on the court and is stepping down.
Yeah, she's stepping down at the end of June, and then Justice-elect Susan Crawford will, of course, be sworn in August. But yeah, 30 years on the High Court for the Chief Justice, and she talks in a wide-ranging interview with Matt from her chambers about the changes to the court that she's seen over the last 30 years. We've had a Supreme Court race, 2 high-profile Supreme Court races in the last 2-3 years that became some of the most expensive court races in the country's history, and so Matt and they talk about money in the courts. They talk about politics in the court. They talk about judicial security, something that has also come up a lot in recent months, and just the changes that we've seen over the course of her 30 years on the High Court, and kind of what happens in the future.
Jaron, we appreciate you joining us. Sounds like a great show this weekend. Thank you. And you can see Up Front this and every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. right here on WBAY TV2.